In the heart of the American Midwest lies a desolate stretch of highway, where the sunsets bleed into the cracked asphalt, and the whispers of the wind carry tales of forgotten souls. It is a place where time seems to stand still, where the echoes of the past linger in the shadows, and where the most horrifying truths lie hidden beneath the surface. On a moonless night, two friends, Sarah and Jake, embarked on a road trip through this barren land. Their laughter filled the air as they cruised down the empty highway, the headlights cutting through the darkness like a knife. Little did they know their journey would soon take a terrifying turn. As they neared the halfway mark of their trip, Sarah glanced at the fuel gauge and felt a knot form in her stomach. The needle hovered dangerously close to empty. "Jake, we need to find a gas station soon," she said, her voice tinged with unease. Jake nodded, his brow furrowing with concern. They scanned the horizon for any sign of civilization, but all they saw was an endless expanse of desert. "Just a few more miles," Jake reassured her, though doubt crept into his own mind. Minutes stretched into hours as they drove on, their anxiety mounting with each passing mile. Finally, a flickering light appeared in the distance like a beacon of hope in the darkness. "There!" Sarah exclaimed, relief flooding her voice. They pulled into the rundown gas station, its peeling paint and broken windows sending shivers down their spines. But with no other options in sight, they reluctantly approached the pump. As Jake filled the tank, Sarah wandered towards the convenience store, her footsteps echoing in the empty silence. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior lined with shelves of dusty snacks and expired goods. She shivered, a chill running down her spine as she reached for a bottle of water. But as she turned to leave, she froze in terror. Standing in the corner of the store was a figure cloaked in darkness, its eyes gleaming with malice. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she stumbled backward, her mind racing with fear. "Jake!" she screamed, her voice echoing through the empty store. Jake rushed to her side, his eyes widening in horror as he saw the sinister figure lurking in the shadows. Without a word, they bolted out of the store, their footsteps pounding against the pavement as they raced back to their car. But as they reached the safety of the car, a bone-chilling realization washed over them. The gas pump lay shattered on the ground, the precious fuel pooling beneath their feet. "We need to get out of here," Jake said, his voice trembling with fear. Sarah nodded, her hands shaking as she fumbled for the keys. But as she turned the ignition, a sickening realization dawned on them. The car was out of gas. Panic set in as they realized the gravity of their situation. Trapped in the middle of nowhere, with no one around for miles, they were at the mercy of whatever sinister force lurked in the shadows. Desperate, they searched the car for any sign of help, but their efforts were in vain. With each passing moment, the darkness seemed to close in around them, suffocating them with its oppressive weight. Hours passed, the night stretching on endlessly as they huddled together for warmth. But as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, they knew their ordeal was far from over. For as they peered out into the desolate landscape, they saw them. Figures moving in the distance, their eyes gleaming with hunger as they closed in on their prey. And as Sarah and Jake braced themselves for the horror to come, they knew that their nightmare was only just beginning. For in this desolate stretch of highway, where the sunsets bleed into the cracked asphalt and the whispers of the wind carry tales of forgotten souls, the most horrifying truths lie hidden beneath the surface. And once you find yourself trapped in its grasp, there's no escaping the darkness that lurks within. As the figures drew closer, Sarah and Jake could see the twisted contortions of their bodies, the grotesque masks they wore, and the glint of sharp implements in their hands. They were like phantoms emerging from the shadows, their movements fluid yet unnaturally fast. With nowhere to run and no means of defense, Sarah and Jake huddled together, their hearts pounding in terror. They whispered frantic prayers, hoping against hope for a miracle to save them from the impending horror. But the figures showed no mercy as they descended upon the car, their laughter echoing through the empty air like the wails of the damned. Sarah and Jake could only watch in horror as the masked assailants began to pry open the doors, their faces twisted into cruel smiles beneath their grotesque masks. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Jake lunged for the steering wheel, his hands trembling as he tried to start the car. But it was no use. The engine sputtered and died, leaving them defenseless against the encroaching darkness. As the first of the assailants reached into the car, Sarah screamed, her voice echoing into the void as she struggled against their grasp. But their strength was overwhelming, their grip like iron as they dragged her kicking and screaming into the night. With tears streaming down his face, Jake watched helplessly as Sarah vanished into the darkness, swallowed whole by the horrors that lurked in the shadows. He was alone now, trapped in a nightmare from which there was no waking. As the hours dragged on, Jake remained huddled in the car, his mind consumed by fear and despair. He prayed for dawn to break, for the first light of morning to banish the darkness that had engulfed him. But when the sun finally rose, casting its golden rays across the desolate landscape, Jake knew that his ordeal was far from over. For as he stepped out of the car, he saw the true horror that lay hidden in this forsaken place. Bodies littered the ground, their lifeless eyes staring into the empty sky, their blood staining the cracked asphalt like a macabre canvas. Sarah was among them, her lifeless form twisted and broken, a silent testament to the horrors that had befallen them. With a heavy heart, Jake knelt beside her, his hands trembling as he brushed the hair from her face. He whispered words of love and regret, knowing that they would never reach her ears. But as he looked up, his heart froze in terror. For standing before him was the figure from the gas station, its eyes gleaming with malevolence as it loomed over him like a specter of death. With a guttural growl, the figure lunged forward, its hands outstretched as it reached for Jake's throat. As darkness closed in around him, Jake knew that he too would become just another forgotten soul, lost to the horrors of the desolate stretch.